to come here and not only finish, but contribute as much as I have. I think the most important thing was to support the team, and after that was to finish. And yeah, it's just kind of tick them 2 boxes is pretty satisfactory. To be on the front of the peloton is like one of the things I love to do. It's the most enjoyable part of the job for me. When you get told, right, there's the break, go and catch it. You turn pro and you start to race, and then you step up to a Pro Tour race, and it's a massive step up again. And then you step up to a Grand Tour, and it's just another step up again from Pro Tour races. So it's really are at the top of the game, so it's nice to be able to do that.
And despite the fact that Sky have lost 2 riders in the last couple of days, Luke Rowe here now has certainly filled those shoes. He's worked very hard for the team today.
Yesterday was probably the icing on the cake. It was not the Queen stage, not the hardest stage, but definitely one of them. So to be able to ride on the front and contribute towards that was pretty special. I can look back over the last 3 weeks and definitely hold my head pretty high. I think every day just contribute to it as much as I can. Like every little extra thing I can do, I try and do it for the good of the team, for the good of Chris, and for the good of the guys. And I think I can look back and there's not many times I think, oh, I could have done that, I could have done extra. Like every day I emptied myself for the good of the boys. So I think I can hold my head quite high in saying that, and yeah, go home quite a happy guy.
Well, the weather has greatly improved, the rain has gone away, and as we go into the last 20 minutes of starters, I think we're going to see dry conditions, Paul, but it's still very wet at the finishing area.
Well, it's still a little bit precarious out on the course. Yes, it has dried in a number of places, but all you need to do is to go around one of these corners, Phil, and find a little bit of moisture on the road, and you can find yourself very quickly on the ground.
So warming up in the start area just away is Chris Froome, and he's been warming up now for the best part of 45 minutes, and he's had a nice gaggle of people around him. Not quite as many as Alberto Contador though, because Contador also getting ready for what will be their final clash. And now we're joining the time trial again, and this is Gianpaolo Caruso, who is the 10th rider to go from the end, which means there's 20 more minutes of starters.
This is Maxime Montfort coming up to the line, former national time trial champion of Belgium. Amazing to think that a lot of these riders have lost more than 1.5 minutes in this individual time trial.
We're now going to see Daniel Navarro here, the 9th from the end to go for Cofidis.
Well, the 31-year-old is going to ride out in 9th place in the overall standings as long as he can keep upright in this very tricky and technical individual time trial. Just inside of 10 kilometres and just around about 12 minutes of effort, but very nervous for these last riders to start. In fact, his wheels slipped there as he started to ride away from the starting ramp.
Yeah, that ramp is absolutely deadly. You can imagine what it was like at the height of the storm as well. Every rider seems to have spun his wheel leaving that ramp. The early starter, Mallory, was the 44th man to start of the 159 riders, holding best time. I mean, he's a very good time trialist. He is the national champion of Italy, but he got the best of the conditions as well.
Well, just looking now, this man, I have to say, yesterday I thought he was going to disappear from the top 10 in the overall standings. The 22-year-old Frenchman, Warren Barguil, fantastic climb, a revelation for me last year of the Vuelta Espana, and I think a man for the future for French cycling. Today, he's just got to get round the next 9.7 kilometres and try and stay upright.
Barguil is underway. Next man to go is Dan Martin. Now, most of the results, I think, were decided on the climb yesterday, and Dan lost his 3 seconds advantage over Samuel Sanchez. It moved him from 6th to 7th overall. There's still just a chance. He's 17 seconds behind Sanchez. So Dan Martin, next to start, will be taking risks. Here comes Gianpaolo Caruso.
He's 14th overall at the start, but look at the times, Phil. I mean, there's not very many of the riders in the latter half of the overall standings have actually managed to get inside of the top 75 positions just because of how treacherous it is out on the course. Look how precariously these riders who've battled it out for 3 weeks are taking it over these final few meters.
Well, even now, they still can't really get these time trial machines around that left-hander. And, of course, they're scared to get out of the saddle and accelerate. They're doing it like mice rather than men at the moment, and I don't blame them.
Well, that's a good point you raised there, Phil, because I wonder if, because of Alberto Contador's big buffer that he's got in the overall standings, will he opt to take a normal road bike onto this final individual time trial? We're only looking here at a 12-minute effort. Well, for Gianpaolo Caruso, 13 minutes and 20 seconds almost. But there is the possibility he could take the risk of just riding a normal road machine to get that manoeuvrability around these pretty precarious corners.
As we go back to the start house now, this is Dan Martin. He's on a 10-second countdown. He is looking for 17 seconds over Samuel Sanchez, who will start 2 minutes behind him. So he's got to race this course, and it's a very difficult course to race in these conditions.
Well, it is, and he probably has got a few memories going back to the Giro d'Italia, because he was part of that team time trial squad for Garmin Sharp that crashed in the team time trial right in the heart of Belfast. So as he pulls himself away, I'm not sure he'll try and take too many risks. I think he's ridden exceptionally well. He starts the day in 7th place in the overall standings. And you know, Sammy Sanchez, the Olympic champion from 2008, well, he's a pretty good time trialist. You look how slowly Dan Martin went around that corner.
Another man who's found himself in this welter, Roman Sikar, former under-23 world road race champion, never really cut it as a pro, but he's had a very good 3 weeks, and he really believes in himself now.
Well, the magical backdrop of the cathedral there of Santiago de Compostela, the end of the Camino, or the Way of St. James. Many pilgrims making their way down. Around about 200,000 pilgrims a year make the pilgrimage down to Santiago de Compostela from about 130 different countries around the world. But today it's all about 9.7 kilometres. Many of those pilgrimages in excess of a couple of 100 kilometres.
Samuel Sanchez into the start house, reverse that 3-second deficit into a 17-second advantage over Dan Martin. Dan Martin started 2 minutes ahead of him. They're split by 17 seconds. This is the closest pairing in the top 10. So he can't afford not to race this course. As he makes his start now, he's chasing Dan Martin as they head to the finish now, though. We're waiting for the top 5 riders to come into the start house. We're looking now at Fabio Aru, 4 minutes 46 seconds behind Alberto Contador. He sits 5th overall in the Vuelta a España. What a season he's had, Paul. A win in the Giro d'Italia with stage 15. 2 stage wins here, and he's only won 3 races this year.
Well, if you can only win 3 races in a year, why not make them stages in the Grand Tours? He's not going to, I think, take too many risks around these corners, but certainly he'll be a man that they'll be queuing up to sign up for next year. He is a great climber, and I think we'll see a lot more of him as the seasons progress.
Well, still nobody threatening the overall lead of Adriano Malori, the 44th rider to start, and he did it in sunshine. He's got the best time at the finishing line. The storm has passed through for these last starters, and Malori himself has said the only man he thinks could reach his time would be Chris Froome. We'll find out, but there's a man that might do it, Alejandro Valverde. Malori's the Italian time trial champion. This man is the Spanish time trial champion.
And he's a very good bike handler. Seems nice and relaxed. He knows now that he's got a comfortable 3rd place in the overall standings. We go a little bit further back. This is Danny Moreno. Again, another rider outside of the top 100, and that really reflects on the conditions that changed in the last 2 hours. A couple of hours ago, it was absolutely torrential rainstorms. I thought I was back at home in a monsoon.
I think the best finish we've seen in the last half hour is about 80th. They've taken no risks at all. The roads are drying out, but they are still wet. But for the leaders of the Vuelta, they may have to take a little bit of risk, not least Dan Martin, if he wants to try and overhaul Samuel Sanchez on this time trial. This out on the course now with Fabio Aru.
24 years of age, finished 3rd overall in the Giro d'Italia, as opposed to the 35-year-old Joaquim Purito. His nickname is Rodriguez. He was a battler, a fighter yesterday. He wanted to get onto the podium, but he just ran out of gas. A couple of kilometers away from the end of yesterday's stage. to the top of a very difficult mountain.
And what a record this man has got. He's ridden 21 Grand Tours. He's only failed to finish in 2 of them. And this is his 11th Tour of Spain here. And he's got a 2/3 and a 4th overall. And he tried desperately to get that 3rd place yesterday, but he's going to be 4th again this time around. The weather looks, though, as we pan around the region, as though we're settled at least for the next 20 minutes, and that's all we need before they're all home. Now, Alejandro Valverde is just inside a minute away from his start. Another man with a terrific record in the Vuelta a España. He's won it once, he's finished 2nd twice, he's finished 3rd twice, and if things go according to plan, he'll have finished 3rd 3 times by the end of this day. But I'll tell you what, if Valverde were to win tonight, then he would take the green jersey as points winner by just 1 point. Another man trying to break inside the 80th place, but he's not going to do it, I don't think. In fact, he just got in 80th there, Navarro, with his finish.
If we look at the time gaps that these guys are losing, Phil,
Enormous.
they're 1.5 minutes. They're talking 1.5 minutes lost in inside of 10 kilometres of riding, and that is really because they're not taking the risks, because it is a beautiful backdrop. I have to say it's a bit of a shame, really, for Santiago de Compostela, because what an incredible finish for the Vuelta this year, a race that's been a great battle, and unfortunately, just that one little cloudburst has really ruined the party, but the party will go on late into the night.
It may have cost him his 9th place overall to Damiano Caruso, because they were only 8 seconds apart at the start. Little less than that, 7 seconds apart.
But he'll still finish up inside of the top 10 in the overall standings at the end of the day, and I think that was pretty much his goal. Here's Chris Froome.
Moments of concentration. He's happy with his 2nd place. Now he wants to confirm that is where he's going to finish, as Alberto Contador paces like a cage lion to get out on the start. Everybody hoping that the rain stays upstairs until this race finishes in about 14 minutes' time. The countdown for Froome. The man, the leader at the finishing line, Mallory says, can beat his time is Chris Froome. The conditions have certainly dried somewhat, but they're not quite as good as when Adriano Mallory made his run. Froome is underway.
Well, somewhat, maybe not enough here, Phil, because there you can see the dampness going around that corner. This man is a great time trialist, but I think this time trial may be just a little bit too short for him, and with those precarious corners, it may well be just a little bit too far. Here's Warren Barguil. Not a bad ride by him. He's probably going to be one of the first riders to go inside of 80th position for quite some time. In fact, he has done.
It is amazing when we're talking of the top 10 riders in the Vuelta, all finishing so far down the finish order here in the time trial on this closing day. It is the first time that we've had a time trial finish for many, many years here in the Vuelta de España.
There you can see, Buggy, you can just see the little cable coming out from inside of his helmet there. That will be his onboard radio. And again, I think the fact that these last riders to start are having the ability to choose the right tyre pressure for the situation and the way the weather has changed this course. This is Alejandro Valverde. You know, looking at his position here, he's taking very, very quickly out of the starting gate. He knows the time to beat. And Rowan Dennis was the fastest man to 5 kilometres at 5 minutes and 42 seconds. There's only one man left to start.
Time to reflect on what happened in the Tour de France in July when he came out on the 10th day with a broken tibia. Now it's all behind him. He's surprised himself on a daily basis. He's lived a dream in his own words. And now he's only ever finished on the podium 3 times in the Vuelta a España, including today, and 3 times he's won the race.
He's a great champion. Many people say he's one of the great Grand Tour riders of all times because he's ridden all of them, and now he's trying to sign one more.
And the crowd cheer away the 159th man to leave the start house. That's the number that will finish this race from the 198, so 20% of the field lost along the way. And Contador has a very, very nice buffer. He doesn't need to take chances. He leads Chris Froome by 1 minute and 37 and Valverde by 2 minutes 35. So risks are not required.
Well, you know, he's a proud rider, let's not forget, Phil. Interesting to note there, you see the straps on that injured knee of his from the Tour de France. They're sporting the Spanish flag colours here this afternoon. as we go a bit further back. It's the arrival of Dan Martin.
Now this will be an interesting time to see what Dan Martin produces. Remember, if he gains 17 seconds over Sanchez, he would climb back into the 6th place he lost to Sanchez yesterday. And again, look at this, Paul, way down the list. They are frightened of the course, into the hundreds. His time will be taken just as he comes. We get a low camera shot. We don't know where the watches are, but the clock stops, and that's good enough for us. There we are. A minute 54 he has lost there. Now it depends on what Sanchez does.
Yeah, but look at the position, Phil. 116th. This is really very, very strange to see the men who are in the top 20 positions in the overall standings finishing so far down. It makes me cast my mind back to the prologue time trial of the Tour de France back in Saint-Brieuc, when Jackie Durand was the winner and only 26 riders rode in dry conditions. And if I remember correctly, the big loser on that occasion was Chris Boardman.
Well, indeed he was. He crashed out, broken bones, and was out of the Tour in the prologue. It was terrible there. Now we're catching up with the legs here, and that's difficult enough to do, of Chris Froome. He's now underway. He started 2 minutes ahead of Alberto Contador, and settling in now. He's not expecting to bridge any gaps here, but he also wants to make sure he stays safe as well, to confirm his second place in the Vuelta a España. Valverde 2 minutes ahead of Froome. Also just he's been going, he started very quickly. I think he's doing a very good ride here, but he's taking no chances here. Look at that adverse camera as well.
Well, I tell you what, you get a chance to see just how tricky. This is the arrival. Now, this is a good ride. This is done. You see, I think the time is right. There's a little bit of a glitch in the system there. If he stopped the clock in, well, if they've got him there 47th at a 1:03, well, certainly his position in the overall standings has not been threatened at all there by Dan Martin.
I think he's beaten Martin's time by 9 seconds. It's very difficult to know exactly what's happening here. They've quickly reorganized before the start where the timekeepers stand, but of course all the television units were in place, so that's why we can't show you the actual crossing of the line. But Sanchez appears to have done 13 minutes and 6 seconds, and Dan Martin 13:15, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, this is Alberto Contador. It is a very, very tricky course here, and everybody, I think, is trying to do what they can.
So as Alberto Contador chases Chris Froome and Froome chases Valverde, the last 3 men are on course. So we're catching up with the puddles on the road here. They're slowly receding as Chris Froome makes his run now. He's been just on 5 kilometres going through now. Rowan Dennis set the best time at 5 kilometres in 5 minutes and 42 seconds. But since then he got that tremendous rainstorm, and he sits in 3rd place at the finishing line. But Paul, no one has come remotely near that leaderboard.
Well, you have to bear in mind Mallory came through the finishing line in dry conditions and now up towards the line. This is a good ride by Fabio Aru. You know, there's not many riders have managed to get inside of the top 80. This is a 24-year-old, 3rd overall in the Giro d'Italia, 3 stage wins in Grand Tours this year, and you know, he's finishing off extremely well.
Well, the road's getting a little bit dry for this left-hander, but they're still showing it a great deal of respect. The clock will stop just as he comes to the little archway here. And now he's slipping into the realm where they're all finishing outside the first 80 riders on the stage. You can see by how fast that counter moves just how many riders are packed in down there. 12:54, 100th place for the man who should finish 5th overall.
Yeah, that leaves just 4 riders on the course now. Rodriguez, Valverde, Chris Froome and Alberto Contador. And the question is, what is Chris Froome going to do at the intermediate time split as Aru stops the clock? Exactly 100th place for the moment, but a loss of 1:42. Froome looks very good here. In fact, he's ridden some very fast short time trials. Even this year, he was the winner of the opening time trial of the Criterium de Dauphiné, on which occasion he actually beat. He's gone through the 5 kilometre point there, 51 seconds down on Rowan Dennis.
Well, the crowd are going to shout Chris Froome over this little rise here. This, without the weather changing like it did, is a very technical circuit here. Lots of corners, not too many straight roads, and we finish in very narrow cobble streets. This was a real challenge to finish the time trial. First time it finished in 10 years with a time trial stage. Now Rodriguez coming in. The time of Aru, 12 minutes and 54 seconds. This is going to be a very, very good time for Rodriguez and will confirm his 4th place finish in the Vuelta Espana. Look at that, Paul, he's making the top 50.
Well, that is an impressive ride when you bear in mind the weather conditions. This man has gone out. Look at his face. He really has given his all on this final 9.7 kilometers. It really is quite precarious, and I have to say it really is rather sad for Santiago de Compostela, because it really has put a bit of a dampener on affairs. He's crossed the line there 55th time, and he's lost 1:08. That's one of the fastest times since Sammy Sanchez came into the line.
Fighter to the end. 34 seconds he's picked up on Aru, so he will keep for sure his 4th place. Now we'll see what Valverde can turn in. I've got a feeling we're going to see a very good time from Alejandro Valverde. If he were to win the stage, I said earlier, he would win the green jersey points competition, but I'm not sure he can produce a ride like the early starter Mallory to get that best time. We'll know pretty soon now. They've started 2 minutes apart. The organisers threatening a spectacular presentation tonight. They'll be getting ready for that now as darkness begins to fall over the city.
Well, Contador has gone through the 5 kilometer time behind Chris Froome, but not by very much. Around about, I think, 13 seconds is the difference between the two. Contador looks very good here. Back though with Alejandro Valverde. Still looks very fast, Phil. He's still in that very low aerodynamic touch position. He's riding like a man who really wants to finish this off. He knows a victory could give him the win in the points competition. I think it's going to be a very difficult ask, but this man, as we've said before, he's a great fighter. He's a racer.
And the city persuading the organisers to come here to celebrate the 800th anniversary of St. Francis, I think has paid off, because this is one of the best crowds we've seen in 3 weeks. It's a great shame, as Paul has said, the weather has turned a little bit ugly in the middle. I'm not going to call Mallory a lucky winner if he is to win, because he's a very good time trial rider. But here comes Valverde. He's right up amongst the top 30 at the moment, and he is racing towards the finish here.
Well, you can see the concentration. It really is a scary thing to drive one of those aerodynamic machines around corners like this. 32nd time for Alejandro Valverde. That's the best time so far of all of the favourites. 55 seconds down, though, on Adriano Mallory.
But he claims another 12 seconds off the man behind him, Rodriguez, so he firms up his 3rd place finish in this edition of the Vuelta, the 69th edition of the race, by the way. And it's all back to Madrid next year as we celebrate 70 events. As we see now, Chris Froome out on course. He'll be the next rider to finish. He's got a nice buffer over Valverde, but he doesn't want to lose too much time.
Well, he was, I made it at 5 kilometers covered, 13 seconds faster than Alberto Contador. I'm sure Contador is not taking too many risks, but there's a personal battle of pride between these two riders. Only 2 riders left now on course. Alejandro Valverde, look at the sun now starting to go down on the wane here in Spain, making it a very, very pretty ending to the Vuelta. 3 weeks of glorious racing around the Iberic Peninsula.
Now, Chris Froome has got to finish with a time inferior to 13 minutes and 7 seconds. If he doesn't do 13 minutes at 7 or better, then he will lose his 2nd place to Alejandro Valverde, and that's a very good time under these conditions. The last 3 riders to finish have all beaten 13 minutes. 1 kilometre to go, Paul. He should do it. He's on a great time and a kilometre out.
Well, theoretically should be around about a 12:30, 12:40 finish for Froome, who's flying along here. He keeps looking down at the white line down the middle of the road. This is high speed. He's at 500 metres to go, but unfortunately he's about 450 metres to go to where the clock will stop. He has to slow down here because here are the granite covers.
Now watch the back wheels dance on these cobblestones. He mustn't take risks here, but by the same token, he could do with a sub 13-minute ride. That would confirm his 2nd place overall. Well, he's around that very, very tricky bend. We're all breathing a sigh of relief, and the clock is saying Valverde did 12 minutes and 8 seconds, rounded up, and he's not beaten Valverde, but he's only got to get inside 13:07 to confirm his 2nd place finish, and he's done that. 12:25. Froome will finish 2nd in the Vuelta.
Well, he precariously comes up to the finish line. He knows he doesn't have to take any more risks there, Phil, and he probably saw Rowan Dennis going down quite dramatically to the ground. Doesn't want to fall on that wrist either that he injured in that nasty crash in the Tour de France. So only one man left now as Chris Froome. Look at the way the machine is bouncing all over the place there as he concentrates on the finish line. He knows now.
The look of fear in the eyes, Paul. These boys are just glad this race is over.
Yes, they all are. I think they were happy to get this one out of the way.
One more rider left to finish. Alberto Contador looking for his third victory in the Tour of Spain. And looking at the clock there, I think we're going to see Adriano Malori jumping with joy as well, because he's going to win this stage, which he accomplished from the 44th start position on dry roads.
Well, the crowd have turned out to celebrate home their victor here this afternoon, because Contador's going to stop the clock just around about the 13-minute mark.
The cheers you can hear for yourself now. These are cheers for the winner of the Vuelta a España, as now he has battled to hold this lead for nearly 2 weeks. And that's the furthest out he's ever taken the lead in a Grand Tour, and defended it all the way to the finish. The clock, and he's done a similar ride, Paul, down in the 80s, heading to the 90s. But Alberto Contador now with a time that's going to break just about the 13-minute margin. 12:52, that's good enough to win the Vuelta a España.
Well, he knows it there as he looks. He crosses what should have been the finishing line. He stopped the clock 50 metres before it, but Alberto Contador has proved again he's the king of the Vuelta.
Well, these are the wheels of Alberto Contador. That's where the time is taken, and look, he knew that as he punches the air as the winner of the Vuelta a España.
And that's him in the middle of that scrum. While he fights his way out towards the podium, let's confirm the result first of all. And with no disrespect intended to Adriano Malori, it was him ahead of 6 other early starters plus Rohan Dennis. The rain saved John Degenkolb. He actually beat Valverde and Contador in the end, but the finish times today are largely meaningless, except as proof that riders did finish.
Vuelta a España 2014, your thoughts?
Oh, it was hard. That's it. Yeah. No, I mean, I hope it was a good race for the people at home, and yeah, I think it was a really good course this year. Really, we didn't have a day off. Every single day was just stressful and hard, like testing in a different manner. We had the crosswinds, climbs, sprints, and yeah, luckily we didn't have the weather until today. You know, we had a bit of rain, but not much. And then today, obviously, it tests our bike handling. But yeah, it's great to, yeah, really happy to bring home my first Grand Tour top 10, and yeah, it's good for the future.
So, on to the ceremonials then, starting with a nicely symmetrical stage winner. Movistar, having taken the opening team time trial, finished the Vuelta by securing the closing individual one. Now, he didn't win it on any individual stage, but Chris Froome took the prize for the most aggressive rider in the entire race, as voted for by the Spanish public, which tells you how much they've appreciated his efforts against their home riders. But no matter what he did, he couldn't dislodge Alberto Contador from the race lead. And no matter Contador's level of embarrassment, there was no dodging the pilgrim's cloak. It was on the post-race protocol, and he had to wear it with matching hat.
Plaza, ¿no? Esta plaza que recibe a tantas miles y miles de personas, y después de 21 etapas con muchísimo esfuerzo y llegar de rojo, la verdad que es un sueño.
¿Estás emocionado?
Pues un poco sí, porque para mí ha sido algo increíble. No me podía imaginar que fuese a terminar de rojo, y la verdad que han sido 3 semanas que voy a recordar siempre por el cariño que me ha dado la gente.
Alberto really was very, very impressive in this Vuelta. I think if I've learned anything about racing against him, it's to not let him get any time, because I'm not going to get that time back from him.
Next year, the Tour de France, that's where we want to see you taking on Alberto Contador. That, you hope, will be a different story.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely look forward to seeing what the Tour route holds in store for us. But yeah, still focused on the Vuelta. Really happy to have finished it off, and looking forward to a good winter now.
No stand-ins on the points podium today. John Degenkolb was showered and ready well in advance of the green jersey presentation, for which he was excellent value. Luis Leon Sanchez was no match for the best climbers in this race, but he had a strategy to pick up mountain points and the nerve and the legs to execute it. Second in the King of the Mountains, third in the points, and first overall, of course, Alberto Contador had the best combined ranking of any rider in the race, which earned him the white jersey. And Katusha won the team prize, although they'd have preferred a podium and probably even a stage win for Joaquin Rodriguez. So here are the final overall standings. No change from this morning at the very top, except for the time gaps. 1 minute 10 Alberto Contador's winning margin over Chris Froome. There was one change in the top 10, Damiano Caruso leapfrogging Daniel Navarro. All the British riders got round safely, Peter Kenyon and Luke Rowe having worked relentlessly for Chris Froome, Adam Yates successfully completing his first Grand Tour, and David Miller his last. Which just leaves the final podium, the physical manifestation of the 1-2-3. Valverde to his right, Froome to his left, Alberto Contador central and slightly but crucially raised. And that is pretty much that. Graham Jones joins us to help wrap things up. And Graham, I suppose the first thing to say after a year in which we've seen so many big favourites crash out is that thank goodness the weather didn't corrupt the overall outcome of the race.
Yeah, it would have been a shame for something to happen today and one of the favourites fall off, but fortunately we didn't get that. A couple of minor crashes here and there, but generally it was a fairly straightforward race.
And I suppose the quality of this race, we've got to thank the two big crashes at the Tour de France for it, because we didn't see Froome and Contador race then, but we really did get the rematch. No, the Tour's loss is the Vuelta's gain. It's been a great Vuelta. Unfortunately, the one rider we did miss out on really in seeing is Quintana. And what did you make of the battle? I mean, everybody thought Contador would come in much the worse off, having had the more serious injury, but he seemed to ride himself into the race sooner than Froome did. Yeah, it's a little bit strange because his injury obviously would be a lot more serious than breaking a hand. You should be able to get back on the bike sooner than that, but I think Froome concentrated so much on the Tour, maybe it took him a little bit more time to get back into the rhythm of it. And what do you think it means for the future of their rivalry? You look at last year's Tour and Froome pretty much destroyed Contador. Here they were very evenly matched and Contador looks as though he's back to his best. I think we've got a fantastic rivalry on our hands going forward. Definitely, and with Nibali and all being well, Quintana in next year's Tour de France, it's going to be some race. Yeah, nothing like using our last few available seconds of airtime for a shameless promo, but the Vuelta does act as a great trailer for next year's Tour de France, as well as being a fabulous race in its own right. As ever, if you've enjoyed the coverage, the people whose names are coming up on the credits are the ones to thank. Thank you for watching. And since probably all that's kept you up watching the past few minutes is the prospect of the music sequence, here it is, the last